going to study chapter 20 of SD 42 or 42.20, Khandha Dukkha Sutta, the aggregate discourse on suffering or on unsatisfactoriness, as 22.104. Now this sutta is a short one, it was very interesting, and you may even say it's very important because it gives us a bit of early history of the Four Truths. Now we all have heard of the Four Noble Truths, they're very well known, very famous. But apparently these Four Truths are not always called Noble Truth, they're simply called Four Truths, Satcha or Chatu Satcha. So this is where, from this sutta, we have an idea that the Four Truths are simply called like that, without any prefix in front. Of course, the value and nature of the truths are not affected in any way, it's just how we call them. Okay? So in this short sutta, you find the word noble is not used. So the question we might ask ourselves is why did in time the Four Truths came to be called noble, and today we know them famously as the Four Noble Truths. Well, the two famous commentators, Buddha and Dhamma, give us some information here. It's from Buddha Gosha's Visuddhimagga, chapter 16, section 20, and from Dhamma's commentary on the Iti Uttaka. The PTS edition is volume 1, page 85. Now, the details are given in this Sutta Discovery 42.20, pages 108 and 109. So I'll summarize or combine the explanations why the Four Noble Truths are so called, why they're called noble. Well, the first reason is the truths were discovered by someone noble, that is the Buddha. Noble here meaning someone who has risen from the state of a worldly person and become truly noble, not in the sense, not in the biological sense, not because he was born so, but because he worked and discovered the truth, freed himself from impurities and defilements, and became Buddha. In that sense, it's noble. It also means here that anyone who understands this truth, practices this truth, can become noble, just like the Buddha. You don't have to be born so, but you practice, you build your qualities up to be noble. The truths are also called noble because of the truths themselves. They are not false, they are true. You might say they are the most real and true of truths and realities, because they tell us what really is going on in the world. So in that sense, the truths themselves are noble. And as I said before, if you practice this truth, they lead you to nobility. So these are some of the important explanations. And the truths are to be practiced, the Four Truths are to be practiced in three different ways. Very simply as theory, practice, realization. So in theory, of course, we listen to teachings on the Four Truths, we try to understand them. So this is on the theory level, okay? And then on the second level, we practice them, meaning we reflect on them, we look around ourselves, within ourselves, and we see this truth, how things are impermanent first. They're impermanent, and because they're impermanent, they're unsatisfactory. So we reflect in that way, in other words. And then, because of that kind of reflection, we begin to see the world differently from the way we've been conditioned to see. In other words, we see directly into the true nature of things. We begin to understand that whatever exists must change. Whatever arises will pass away. Things come, things go. So it becomes something real, something we accept. And in that way, we are not traumatized by suffering, by things changing around us. The things that we love change, people that we care for change, even we ourselves change. And we're not traumatized by this. We accept this as true reality, and we're happy with it, and we know that we all can change for the better too. So altogether here you have Four Noble Truths multiplied by the three kinds of approaches to the truth. You have 12 modes of the Four Truths, if you like. So all this you can see more details in the translation of the Dhamma, cakka, Pavattana Sutta, the very first sutta in this series, in the ST series. Okay, so let's look at the sutta here on page 109. The sutta S22.104 starts off simply by saying, originating at Savatthi. So this teaching is given in Savatthi. Bhikshus, I will teach you about suffering and the arising of suffering and the ending of suffering and the way to the ending of suffering. So these are the Four Noble Truths stated quite simply. Suffering is dukkha in the Pali. Dukkha simply explained, if we look at the Pali word, do is something difficult, just like in English, difficult. Ka could be something like difficult to tolerate. Okay. So then, the arising of suffering. Here, notice we don't use the word cause of suffering. Nothing causes suffering in a sense. Suffering arises, passes away. When the conditions are right, fire arises, for example. Now, when we say some A causes B, it's just a way of talking. For example, we say the oil caused the fire, but it's just a way of talking, because the oil by itself will not burn. There must be many conditions to start a fire. You have oil, and then you have air or oxygen around, and there is someone like a match and so on, and so all these right conditions are there, and this fire starts. So we're talking about conditions and conditionality here. So this fire arises, suffering arises, pain arises, unsatisfactoriness arises. So that's the second truth. Of course, if we go a little further, we can ask ourselves, arises from what? Because of what, we live for life. Here we say arises through craving, right? So, in a sense, if you want to talk about the cause of suffering, you would say it's craving. In a sense that craving is a feeling of being drawn to something outside of us. We look around us through our five senses, what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and we notice we don't have those things outside of us. We want more of them, so that we feel a sense of lack. And when you feel this sense of lack, which is very subjective, in other words, you create it yourself, we create it ourselves, then we are drawn to look for this satisfaction from outside. And that's called craving. And but the very fact that we crave for something, it also means that we will not be happy when there is something or someone trying to stop us, prevent us, or frustrating us from getting all these things that we desire or are looking for. And that's called ill will, hatred, and so on. So you have these two opposites. And of course, we experience when we get something we like, we feel good, we feel pleased by it. Or when we feel pleased with something, we want it. And the opposite of it is, we see something we do not like, or something that brings back some bad memories, we dislike it, so you got like, dislike. Then there are things which you cannot relate to. You have not experienced those things before. For example, if you first time you're doing meditation, you notice there are some kind of feelings, you can't relate to them, so you just ignore them. And when you ignore them, then ignorance arises. Right? So you find the three roots, greed, hate, delusion, being reinforced in that way. So this is a very quick survey on the nature of the arising of suffering. And the very fact that suffering arises also means that it will end, it can end, in other words. The problem is we don't see things that way, so we tend to perpetuate the craving, and so this suffering seems to go on and on and on, and in the end we really feel so bad about it, we want to get out of it, we just do not know how. So this is where we have to reflect on the nature of suffering as being impermanent, all things being impermanent. Right? So, in other words, if we see things are really changing all the time, arising, passing away, then we say, oh, even this suffering also is like that. Another way of talking about this sort of behavior, this sort of understanding is letting go. We let go of this wrong view that we have. So notice here, nothing happens to the world. The world remains as it is. This is how we see the world. What we are changing is we change ourselves. No one can change the world. No one has ever really changed the world. Or if we do try to change, we only make things worse where the world is concerned. So that what we need to change is ourselves. Some people even try to change Buddhism, trying to fit Buddhism into how they think and so on. But the reality is, if you look at early Buddhism, you don't have to change anything then. I mean, it's just like good medicine. You don't have to change medicine. It's like the fresh air. You don't have to change fresh air. You breathe in the fresh air. And you benefit from this. You don't change these things. You change yourself. So here, by letting go, in other words, by opening our minds up to see things rightly and clearly into true reality, we begin to see through suffering. And of course, ultimately, we attain nirvana. Nirvana is where all these ideas of suffering are all gone. Our mind is unconditioned. So this is a very high level indeed. And this is the third noble truth. Third truth. And then the last one is the path itself, right? The Eightfold Path, or we can divide them out in terms of practice into moral virtue, training of body and speech. And then the second one is training of the mind. And then thirdly is to have insight wisdom, to see and understand the form of noble truth as they really are. Sometimes in some ancient formulas, you find four truths. You have suffering, the arising, and then the path, and the ending is last. So that's another way we can look at it in terms of actual practice. So you can see this short, even this introduction there is very interesting, but it doesn't stop there. There's still a bit more. Let's go on. So the Buddha, after mentioning the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha says, listen. Right? Now what's interesting here is the Buddha says, Buddha speaks of the Four Truths first, and then he says, listen, and the verse is there's somewhat to say, and this is important. He's going to explain the Four Truths further. In section 4, the Buddha continues, and what bhikkhus is suffering? It should be said, the five aggregates of clinging. So here, we find this is the oldest definition of suffering, if you like. In the Dhamma, cakka, Pavattana Sutta, although it's called the first discourse, it was actually put together much later because the monks were not sure exactly what the Buddha taught the 5 monks, the exact words. So they formulated a more detailed kind of teaching, not just the Four Noble Truths, but with some detail. So in the case of suffering, it becomes almost like a commentary, right? Birth is suffering, death is suffering, and so on and so forth. And the last one is the five aggregates. Whereas in this sutta, the Buddha straight away goes to say the 5 aggregates actually are what are really suffering. Now one simple rule of thumb here is that the shorter the teaching is, the older it's likely to be. So here, what really is suffering are the 5 aggregates. And what are the 5 aggregates? Section 5. And what bhikshus are the 5? They are the aggregate of clinging that is form, rupupadana khandha, the aggregate of clinging that is feeling, vedanupadana khandha, the aggregate of clinging that is perception, sanyupadana khandha, the aggregate of clinging that is formations, sankharupadana khandha, and the aggregate of clinging that is consciousness, vinyanupadana khandha. This bhikshu is suffering. So these 5 aggregates are what we really are. If you reduce further the 5 aggregates, you can say they constitute our body and mind. Form is our body, and the rest are aspects of our mind. So we begin from there, in other words. Okay? It's a very good place to begin, because that's how we know things, through our body and mind. Our body are the 5 senses. All that we can know are through the 5 senses. And what we can know are the 5 sense objects. And we know these things through our minds. And another way of looking at all these are the 5 aggregates. Form, feeling, perception, formation, consciousness. Well, volume 17, ST volume 17 is a double volume that studies the 5 aggregates in great detail. So here, what is suffering? The body is suffering because it's impermanent. Feeling suffers, or we suffer on account of feeling. Now notice the English way of talking. We suffer on account of feeling, or I suffer on account of feeling. It's just a way of talking. There's no I to suffer. There's just this suffering. There's just this arising of pain, going away of pain. No I, because it's moving, changing, becoming other all the time. You try this simple experiment. You notice one day when you feel some kind of pain, maybe you're sick or you fell down, just calmly observe the pain. You find the pain is not like one lump, it's kind of moving, changing. The pain comes and goes, comes and goes. It's a time when there is this feeling of intense kind of feeling, then there seems to be no pain in between. So in other words, we feel pain because of the absence of pain. So they kind of contrast. That's how we know things. Okay? And from there we begin to understand even pain is impermanent. Feeling is impermanent. Perceptions, how we understand things, how we see things. All these perceptions also change, because perception is very much based on how we look at the past, how our past influences our present, how we recognize things through our past. And what is the past? The past is our knowledge. Whatever we know is about the past. We cannot really know about the future. We can know a bit maybe. For example, if you are tired, you know you're going to fall asleep. There's a little bit into the future, yes you can, but you cannot really know in great detail what's going to happen, because if you know, if that's really possible, then life is kind of fixed. Then it is determined, predetermined. You don't have to do anything. There's no point in being good, because things are already fixed. So because the future is uncertain, it's good for us. In other words, we can change to be better. There's this chance for us to better ourselves. Of course, if we don't, there's also this chance that we might not better ourselves, it might get worse. So this is where the Dhamma comes in to help us. So that's perception. Formations is basically we can understand them as karma. This term sankharas in the plural, because with lots of thoughts, we think things in an explosion of thoughts, and then we talk. We express all these thoughts in words, and then we act all these things out. So we do this deliberately, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, because it becomes such a habit, we like as if we don't think about it anymore. We just act, we just do it. For example, let's say someone is a killer, or a butcher or a slaughterer has been killing people, killing animals so regularly until he doesn't feel it anymore. He doesn't think killing is wrong, but it is still wrong. The karma still acts on this person. So sankhara is that situation where the karma begins to act on us. So we have to be very aware of negative karma to prevent them, let go of them. And the last one is the stage, the background in which all these things happen is our consciousness. Consciousness is the basic activity of our senses, our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. How we experience the world around us and how we experience ourselves, so to speak. So these are the 5 aggregates in very simple terms. So this is the first noble truth, right? Or the first truth. Then the Buddha goes on to explain the second truth, section 7. And what it shows is the arising of suffering. It is this craving that leads to renewed existence or rebirth, accompanied by pleasure and lust, seeking pleasure here and there. That is to say, the craving for sensual pleasures, Pavattana, the craving for existence, Pavattana, the craving for non-existence or for extinction, Vipavattana. This, Bhikshus, is called the arising of suffering. Right? So, how does suffering arise? How does suffering keeps on popping up? Here we say because of craving. It arises from craving. And there are 3 kinds of craving. Number 1 is the simplest, most common sensual pleasures. We are our senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Right? But here, the 5 senses is meant. In other words, we are caught up with experiences through our eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. What we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and we are attracted to them when we see them as pleasant, and we kind of try to push them away when we see them as unpleasant. So there's this like-dislike aspect. Okay, that's called sensual craving. We tend to want more and more pleasant feelings, maybe touching someone, or maybe some nice kind of food, maybe some kind of music or some beautiful sights and so on. So the problem here is not because we want this thing that causes suffering. It is when we do not know when to stop, and when the object of desire is also the wrong one, not wholesome, in other words. What we are saying here is that we can enjoy sensual pleasures in a wholesome way. In fact, there are saints, streamliners, who enjoy sensual pleasures. They are said to be karma-bhogi, lay people who are streamliners who enjoy sensual pleasures. In other words, they see, hear, smell, taste, and touch or feel beautifully. They are very happy. But they do not break the precepts. They experience the world of the 5 senses, in a very happy, beautiful way. This is really enjoying life, in fact, because they're doing it in a happy way within the limits, within the purview of the 5 precepts. Right? So, in other words, we can enjoy such a pleasures, yes, but within the understanding the spirit of the 5 precepts of moral virtue. Okay, we know when to stop. In other words, it's okay to take good food, but you must know when to stop, so you don't get sick on account of the food, for example. So, that is sensual pleasure. The next one is the desire for existence. Yes, when, let's say, a meditator, he is able to go into deep meditation. In other words, he is able to let go of the 5 senses, and is able to attain higher levels of mental experience, the form world, pure energy, if you like, and then the formless world, even more purified energy. So here is where they say, wow, this form world, this formless world is so wonderful. Then they get caught up with it. They want to be reborn there. but according to the Buddha, whatever is born will pass away. Right? So we will fall from those higher states even and go into the suffering states. The higher you go, the harder you fall. That's one way of putting it. So, in other words, the solution is not going up and up. The solution rather is looking deep within ourselves, understanding our true nature and seeing the true nature and freeing ourselves from this craving, from wanting, attracted to the sensual pleasures and being attracted to the various realms of rebirth, whether form or formless. We let go of all of them. Well, the third form of craving is called craving for non-existence. Right, so here is where some people feel, okay, the body is not pure, so I shouldn't be caught up with all this craving for sensual pleasures. At the same time, to be reborn higher planes, again, they are all impermanent anyway, or for some people, they can't attain it, so they feel, well, what's the point anyway? So that may destroy my life. Maybe if I end my life, I'll end everything. So this is a kind of, it's called annihilationism. Okay? In other words, we feel that by ending this life, we can end everything else. But that's not the case. It doesn't end there because there's rebirth. Other people who care for us will suffer if we do that. In other words, we have a responsibility. We should be accountable for our actions. We're not alone, but we do affect others. And so we cannot just say, oh, if I were to kill myself, or if I simply give up everything of the senses, that's it. It's not simple as that. Right? So this extreme of idea that we can end it all by killing ourselves is wrong. So this, interestingly, is also a kind of materialistic idea. The materialists generally believe the body and the mind, or body and soul, are one and the same thing. So when the body dies, the soul, the mind also ends with it, right? So in other words, when we die, that's it. There's no more future life, nothing else. So this is what the materialists generally believe. Now, if we have this kind of belief, there's some moral problems then. So we can say, all right, so I can do whatever bad things I like, steal, rob, rape, and so on, in this life, right? So I enjoy this life to the greatest extent, because when I die, there's nothing, right? So if everybody think like that, then people are going to be very selfish, right? So they won't really care about other people. So it's not a good idea, in other words. Although we cannot really prove karma and rebirth, they are definitely very good ideas that help us to understand a lot of things that's going on around us, and they explain a lot of difficult situations in our lives much better than the God idea, or opposite of, or by rejecting this idea of karma and rebirth. Whether we are able to prove them or not, here is not the point. The point is they are really good working ideas, at least, for us to live as good people, respecting one another, and being responsible for our actions. It is something worth thinking about. And then the third truth, section 10. In one bhikshu is the ending of suffering. It is the utter fading away and ending of that very craving, giving it up, letting it go, being free from it, being detached from it. This bhikshu is called the ending of suffering. What is just the word letting go then, right? So in other words here, what do we let go of? We let go of our views. We have all kinds of views. A view is simply one way of looking at something. So we have all kinds of views, and our views keep changing as we age, as we experience things in life. If you look back your life when you're very young, and you progress from there every 10 years more or less, you find you keep changing your ideas, even childhood memories. Right? You might think something about something when you're very young, and then as you grow older, you look back, your idea will also change. Even how we remember things are constructed. In other words, we choose a certain way of remembering things. We choose how to interpret what we experience, our memories even. So there's no fixed idea about these things. These are called views. In other words, we have to let them come, let them go. We can't really hold on to them. It's just like this mountain, I mean, you can take a picture of the mountain, that's one view. But the mountain is not just one view. The mountain's got its own shape, its own reality. So we can't really take over the mountain. We just look at the mountain as it is, we're happy, and we have to leave the mountain where it is. So to the sunset. You can imagine a sunset, yes, but you can take photographs of it, but still not the sunset. To see a sunset, you got to be there. The sunset is an experience, a direct experience. You are there, you see the sunset, you feel happy, and then you let it go. Only then you're happy. By letting go of our views, letting go of our ideas. Then we are free from views. Like a mirror. The mirror doesn't have any views, it just simply reflects what's before it. So if you can do that, then you can be a friend to everyone. You reflect what people say, you're a good listener. It doesn't mean you're empty, not at all. You are wise and observant, and you can respond to people in a very happy, effective, helpful way. In other words, you're a great people helper, full of compassion, and of course, wisdom, because you see things as they really are. So this is the ending of suffering. And then the fourth truth, section 13. And what we choose is the path or the way leading to the ending of suffering. It is this very noble eightfold path. That is to say, right view, samma ditthi, right thought or right intention, samma sankappa, right speech, samma vacha, right action, samma kammanta, right livelihood, samma ajiva, right effort, samma vayama, right mindfulness, samma sati, right concentration, samma samadhi. This we choose is called a way leading to the ending of suffering. The sutta ends there. So here this path is the path of practice. Buddhism is a path. So other religions just tell you to believe, and that's it. Sounds very simple, but nothing happens really. Here, path means you walk the path. Anyone can walk the path. You can't believe, you can't just believe the path, you have to walk it. It's like the medicine, you can't just believe this medicine can help you. You can have the greatest belief, you can think of the best medicine in the world. If you don't take it, it's not going to work. So the path is something you must walk on. So that's why there is this analogy, this image of the path, magga. Yeah? And the path is gradual. Right? So you see, the Buddha here lists the eightfold path. Number one is right view. Right view comes first because it's the most important. You have to view all the other 7 factors or limbs properly, correctly, right? So in other words, there is right view in right thought. Right view is what make it right, otherwise it's wrong thought. The right view is in right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So that's why the right view comes first. But in practice, we practice limbs number 3, 4, 5 first. In other words, the moral virtue. Okay? Our action of speech, verbal action, body, they must be wholesome. They must help us understand ourselves better. They must help us harmonize with others around us and with the world around us. So this is the moral virtue aspect. With moral virtue as the foundation, imagine like a pyramid. So the bottom layers constitute moral virtue as the foundation of the spiritual life. our body and speech must be calm first, must be trained first. Then we train the mind. Okay? But of course, they help each other. Because if your mind is trained, you observe the precepts better. When you keep the precepts well, you can meditate better. Your mind is more healthy and clear. Right? So the second training is that of the mind. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Okay? Then with cultivated body, cultivated mind, then you direct your mind to see true reality. You have right view, right thought, and what do you call it? These are the two, no? Right view and right thought. Okay? In other words, you see things as they really are, and because you see things as really are, you are not deluded by them, you are not cheated by them, you are truly happy. So, in essence, that is the Eightfold Path. So here, of course, what's interesting is you have the Eightfold Path called Noble here. So I suppose because of this later they also call the truth as noble. So you have the Four Noble Truths, the number 4, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So there you are, in essence, you have a quick look at the very ancient texts on the Four Truths, where you find the Four Truths are not described as noble. Okay? They're just simply called the Four Truths, cakka, true reality. There's something to reflect on. Okay, so we end here today. Let us do a short reflection now. Whenever we look at the suttas, we often discover new things about the Buddha's teaching and also about ourselves. Today we have looked at how simple the Four Truths are and how they were simply called truth, and then how we call them begin to change through time. In other words, we begin to understand these teachings better, and we try to call them in a way that help us remember their quality better. Reflecting in this way is very good, wonderful karma, but all such karma may we live happily, peacefully, wisely in this life itself. By all the various good deeds we have done, faith in the Three Jewels, teaching the Dhamma, practicing the Dhamma, practicing generosity, may we attain spiritual liberation, especially stream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace, let us send out our loving kindness to all the beings here, to all those who have been kind and supportive of us, to all our loved ones, may they be well and happy. And to all those who are working for the Dhamma, may they see the true teaching and respect the Three Jewels and the training. And also may we send out our loving kindness to those people whom the Dhamma have not touched, people who might not even like us. May they be well and happy too, so that they will see the Dhamma and be happy and good people. May all be